So Bellator 289, Stots versus Sabatello is taking place this weekend alongside UFC 282. This is going to be on the Friday night, and then on Saturday night you're going to be getting UFC 282. So you really could make a whole weekend out of this event. If you're unfamiliar with me, I'm Artem MMA Analysis. I do the non-UFC events and do a couple of predictions for Bellator, Dana White's Contender Series and PFL on the We Want Picks channel. So you don't see me all the time, but I'm here sometimes, and I hope to try and make a splash when I am here. So hopefully you enjoy this video. I'm just going to quickly run through the card though, because it is going to be a pretty good one. Stots versus Sabatello have been talking a lot of trash to each other, which is quite funny, and especially Danny Sabatello, because he does not really have a trash talking voice. Just watch like an interview or something of his and you'll understand what I mean. Liz Camus is going to be defending her flyweight bout against Juliana Velasquez. Liz Camus literally just took the belt off Velasquez. It was a somewhat controversial stoppage, so they're running it back. You've also got another part of the bantamweight tournament as well. The main event's part of the bantamweight tournament, but it is for a bout. And then the bantamweight tournament, Patchy versus Magomedov, is going to be a very high level bantamweight fight, both very good fighters. And then aside from that, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I am going to run through these prelims somewhat quickly because a lot of them are somewhat set up fights. You know, like we've got a couple of opponents here like Lucas Brennan, 7-0, taking on 10-6 fighter. And then we just got like 3-1 fighter taking on a 1-2, so I'm going to run through them pretty quickly. But aside from that, I'm really looking forward to the card. Bellator prelims are Bellator prelims. If you know by now, you know by now, and you'll see by the odds. But let's just quickly get into it, man. And with the first fight of the night, we don't really get off to the best start because Lucas Brennan versus Wiley. I am reading rumors that this fight potentially might not be taking place because of the Wiley side. Apparently, this guy isn't really able to fight apparently on the card or something like that. He literally does have one eye, and I think maybe the commission is having a problem with that. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to make up any rumors or anything, but it's an interesting matchup here because Wiley, he seems to be moving up a weight class. He's fought at bantamweight before. He's fighting Lucas Brennan at 145, who is 7-0, 3-0 amateur record, and is only 22 years old. Someone that Bellator has been building up for a while. They're giving him increasingly high level competition over time, and he's just submitting them, man. I think unfortunately for Wiley, I think he's going to do the same thing. A step up in competition, definitely the most experienced fighter he's ever fought on the Brennan side. But I think he is going to submit Wiley as well. Wiley's also a grappler. He's got 6 wins by submission. Lucas Brennan's got 5 wins by submission, and also Lucas Brennan, as I said, undefeated amateur, undefeated as a pro. He's just a guy that Bellator's trying to build up as a big prospect. I think if he beats Wiley, if the fight does take place this weekend, I think you're going to see him take another step up in competition, and maybe in a couple of years' time, you might see Lucas Brennan with like a crazy 12-0, 13-0 record or something that Bellator's produced. And then you could see him like the top 10 of their rankings, kind of like the AJ McKee situation. They built up AJ McKee, it was a big success, and it's kind of what they're trying to do with a lot of these 7-0, 8-0 prospects that they're feeding increasingly more difficult levels of competition. There's no odds on this fight to my knowledge at the moment on best fight odds. As I said, there's rumours that this fight's not going to take place, so I'm not going to look into it too much, but I am picking Brennan by submission, and so a lot of people. I'm pretty sure if the fights that did have odds, it would be very wide on the Brennan side, so he's just a very big favourite in this matchup. Now, in the second fight of the night, you've got Denise Kilcotts taking on Lara Joanne. I am going to be going with Denise Kilcotts, but I'm actually not too confident in this pick. She is almost 34 years old, but she is more experienced than Lara Joanne in martial arts in general. I know that Lara Joanne does have a lot more fights than her, but if you look into Kilcotts' record, she actually does have a pretty successful kickboxing and Muay Thai background, where she was even fighting in Bellator kickboxing. I'm not too sure if that's something that's still around, but when it was around, she was having a lot of success there. My dog is barking in the background, I'm sorry. She's also got a couple of Muay Thai fights. She's got a recent kickboxing fight as well, and I think that she should be able to beat Lara Joanne. Both girls are pretty well rounded. Both Lara Joanne and Denise Kilcotts are finishers. They do have quite a few finishes on their record by both knockout and submission. I like Denise Kilcotts to win this one by decision. I do think the fight is going to go the distance. I would not be too surprised if Lara Joanne was managing to get the win here. I am really bad at picking women's MMA. I don't know what it is about it. Some people find it super easy, but man, just me, I really struggle with it. But I'm going with Kilcotts here. She also had a very competitive fight with Juliana Velasquez, the former champion. She was the champion at the time before she lost to Camus. And also then she did get submitted by Kana Watanabe, but she's a really good prospect. Kana Watanabe actually TKO'd Lara Joanne about 3 years ago. So yeah, I like Kilcotts. She has been more active as well. She's threw in a kickboxing fight in there between her last MMA fight. I just like her to win, man. I think on the feet she should have an advantage. She should be able to win by a decision in this matchup here. I completely forgot to mention the odds in the last one there, so what I'm going to say is Denise Kilcotts was minus 170 to minus 175-ish, and Lara Joanne is about plus 140 or so. The next matchup is Kyle Crutchman taking on Julio Willis, and I'm going to be going Kyle Crutchman here. He's a wrestler, that's kind of his base, and it's kind of what he uses, man. A lot of his wins recently have been done with his wrestling. He's winning a lot of decisions. He beat Levan Chakali, which is a very well-aging win. He beat Oliver Inkamp, which is a pretty good win as well. And Michael Lombardo. These three guys are all really good Bellator prospects, and his one loss is to Kimran Lechinov, who actually went on The Ultimate Fighter Season 29, lost to Brian Battle, and he still hasn't fought since. But, yeah, that was cool, man. But Julio Willis, you know, I feel like similar sort of style in a way. He's got 10 wins by decision, 5 wins by KO. He's never won any fight by submission. So if Kyle Crutchman is just taking him down and getting on top of him, he's not really going to have a submission threat there. I think that Crutchman can stay safe and kind of work his ground and pound, work his submission attempts, because he does have some very impressive submissions in his arsenal as well. But Julio Willis, you know, he did lose to Magomedov, but that does happen, and then he got submitted by Samar Hamasi. Samar Hamasi is just a very up and down fighter at the moment. He's pretty exciting, but then at one point this guy was a really promising prospect, got signed out at LFA, and then was 15-2, and now he's on a little 2-fight losing streak. Kyle Crutchman is a difficult opponent. You can get Kyle Crutchman at minus 300, which is pretty wide odds in my opinion, but Crutchman is just a really good, as I said, he's a really good opponent. He's a really good wrestler. I think he's going to be able to be safe using his wrestling. So give me Crutchman to win a decision in this matchup here, and he should beat Willis. And this next matchup is crazy. Patrick Downey is 1-0, and you can get him at a minus 2,000 favorite. That's like Baume level odds right there, man. He's fighting a 2-2 opponent, a much better opponent than who he made his debut against, which was a 0-3 Case Nelson, to kind of get him into MMA because he's got no amateur background. But if you don't know Patrick Downey, I'm about to teach you a couple of things about him. This guy was a very successful wrestler. In 2012, he was a silver medalist in the Junior World Wrestling Championships in men's freestyle wrestling and the US National Championships. In 2019, he was a gold medalist. In 2019, in the Pan American Games, he was a bronze medalist, and he's also a really good grappler as well. You can see this guy fighting in grappling competitions, and he's having mixed levels of success, but it's telling you that he's trying to mix his wrestling with his grappling, with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You know, like, he's got a win over Gordon Ryan in wrestling, he's got a loss to Gordon Ryan in grappling, but Gordon Ryan's got like a 96-5 grappling record or something crazy, and he's just as I said, man, he's been competing in grappling tournaments at around early to late 2021. Why can I not speak English right now? He's just a legit grappler, man. I think he's going to out-grapple Christian Eccles, who does have 2 wins by submission against not that great opponents like 2-6, 1-2, and he's lost to Trayshawn Gore, actually, who ended up in the UFC, which is kind of crazy, and then he lost to a debuting guy. But yeah, Patrick Downey, man, I think this guy's legit. I think this guy is kind of like, just to make a comparison, is kind of like Bellator's version of Bo Nickel. I feel like they're going to try and build him up this way. He's a middleweight, he's got a crazy wrestling background, he's got really good grappling and really good jiu-jitsu, and he's just really good. Sorry, minus 2,000 though is pretty wide. I don't really know what you can do about that. I think you might just have to play like a submission prop in the first or second round or something like that. But yeah, I think Patrick Downey submits Christian Eccles. I'm gonna say in like the first or the second round. I'm more so leading the first round. This guy's a minus 2,000 favorite. Have I said that enough? Minus 2,000, minus 1,500, minus 1,400 on some sports books. But man, this guy's a hot prospect. I would kind of call him the Bellator version of Bo Nickel. They're kind of building him up the same way. He's really good, as I said, really good wrestling and grappling. I need to shut up about this guy. I've repeated myself 3 times. Let's just move on. But that's the point, man. Patrick Downey's a guy to keep your eye on, though, for sure. And this next fight here, Randy Field taking on Christina Dickies, and man, I am nervous about this fight. I'm picking Randy Field, but I'm just nervous about the pick because I just have a really bad feeling that it's going to be wrong. Christina Dickies potentially could be a live underdog, but do not put any money anywhere near this fight. I really do not recommend it. She does have a bit of grappling matches here, a couple of draws and a knee bar finish which could be good coming into this matchup because Randy Field's got a couple of losses by submission. On her amateur record, she lost to Sumiko Inaba by submission, so in total across amateur and pro, she's got 3 submission losses, so maybe it is a weakness in her game. I guess Dickies obviously is working on her grappling, although she doesn't have a finish as a professional. She does have a split decision win as an amateur. But both girls, you know, because Dickies fought 3 times in 3.5 years, Randy Field has fought 4 times in 3.5 years. They're both not super active. I mean, it's just a weird fight. It's a scary fight for me to put like my name on and make a prediction on, but I am going with Randy Field. I'm not confident in it. This is like super low level women's MMA. Don't touch it, please, as what you should get out of this. But I'm going to move on really quickly before I just make myself look really stupid talking about this fight. And in this next fight, you've got Kevin Baume taking on Kaikumaka III, and Kaikumaka III's second Bellator run. You know, this guy was signed to Bellator. And then PFL, I mean, he got a win over Tony Kelly in the UFC in his debut, but he fought a couple of times in Bellator. Bellator built up his record a little bit. He beat undefeated Michael Stack. And then he took on JSP, got ground and pounded out, had a somewhat controversial fight with TJ Brown, had a close fight with Danny Chavez, and a fight which I believe was a draw because they took a point. And then he come into Bellator, looked pretty good against John De Jesus, who's a pretty tough fighter. And then he fought Justin Gonzalez, and I picked Kaikumaka III to beat Justin Gonzalez in that fight there, and unfortunately didn't quite materialize for Kaikumaka. But this guy just fights in close fights and losses, and he had a pretty unlucky UFC run with that draw to Danny Chavez and that split decision loss to TJ Brown, which really could have gone his way. But he's fighting Kevin Baume, and although they've got the same records, these guys, the level of competition that both of these guys have fought in their career is just not the same. You know, only 7 months ago, he got a win over Jason Powers, who was making his pro debut. And the reality is, Kevin Baume was really just brought in to build up Ahmed Magomedov, who was a 9-0 prospect coming into Bellator. Baume missed weight for that fight as well, and Ahmed Magomedov ended up submitting him. And I just think that this is another tough test for Baume. I think that Kaikumaka III should win this one here, win this one by decision. He's a good striker. He's just a good all-round fighter as Kaikumaka III. I think he's just going to be better than Baume, and that's just why I'm picking him to win the fight. The odds kind of reflect that as well. You're getting Kaikumaka at minus 300, all the way upwards of minus 350. I think it makes sense, man. I think the level of competition that both of these guys have fought, and even then, Kevin Baume, he's not really like looking great against these guys that he's beating, like a split decision win over an 11-6 opponent. Kaikumaka III just went to a split decision with Justin Gonzalez, who was a guy that Bellator was building up, a guy that had fought on Dana White's Contender Series in the past, I believe. A 12-1 opponent, like just different levels, man. I think Kaikumaka III beats him in a decision. And in this next matchup, you've got Sabatello taking on Jared Goggins. And one thing that I am wondering is Sabatello gonna be having the green here? His nickname is the Mean Green Fighting Machine. Is he gonna dye his hair green again to fight Jared Goggins? It'll be interesting to see. But I'm gonna be picking Jared Goggins in this matchup here. He's not the most active fighter in the world. Like, this guy fought Josh Hill about a year ago, and then before that he took about a year and 2 months off, and he was minus 110. On either side with Josh Hill going on that one. It was a pick him to odds. Josh Hill ended up knocking him out, which is a red flag because Josh Hill at this point of his career doesn't knock people out. But I think Jared Goggins should be able to get it done over Sabatello. This is a big step down in competition from Hill. And Goggins also has got good wins on his record as well. He's got a win over Cody, who's gone on to have a somewhat successful career in the UFC. He's got a couple of wins, couple of losses in the UFC. But Darden is a name that a lot of people will know, and a guy that has built himself up to have a pretty big name. He just knocked out JP Bays in the first round. And Sabatello, he's kind of one of those guys which Bellator built up, as I was talking about before, but they built him up way too fast. Like, this guy was 5-0, and he fought Ralphion Stots, who was on his way up, and then he fought Jornal Lugo, who was 5-0, and he was also on his way up, and Jornal Lugo got through him. And that was a year and a half ago, man. Jared Goggins has fought 3 times in the last 3 years. Sorry, this is Sabatello, has fought 3 times in the last 3 years. Jared Goggins has fought 3 times in the last 4 years. Both of these guys are not the most active guys in the world, but for Jared Goggins, he can get away with it because he is only a 28-year-old fighter. He can take these times away to improve or focus on his life. But Sabatello, if he really wanted to make a commitment to MMA, he's 36 years old, and a lot of fighters do retire around this time, and I feel like Jared Goggins is the more up-and-coming guy. I like the skill set out of him. I like his win over Cody Durden because Cody Durden was a really good wrestler. He still is a really good wrestler, and he beat Cody Durden earlier on in his career, I do know, but it's still a good win, especially at the time because Durden was undefeated. I'm trying to find odds in this fight. I can't find them, which is really embarrassing. Let's have a look. Bell is plus 400 and Jared Goggins is minus 600. I wouldn't line it like that. I don't know what I'm seeing that the bookies aren't. I would line it a little bit closer. They're minus 600 Jared Goggins, but anyway, that almost confirms my pick of Goggins to be a pretty good one. I think Goggins is going to win by decision over Bell. And this next matchup is Mark Leminger taking on Michael Lombardo. And I thought I was going to have an underdog pick in this one, but he's not an underdog. He's an underdog on the Tapology votes. He's 17% Leminger, and that is who I'm picking. But he's actually a favorite according to the odds. He's minus 150 almost on some sports books, man. But I do like Mark Leminger in this matchup. The level of competition that this guy has been fighting is much better than Michael Lombardo. Lombardo was on Dana White's contender series against Corey Coupe, where he won a decision. He didn't get signed to the UFC, obviously, because if he did get signed, he would be in the UFC. And then he fought in PFL. He won by leg kicks, which is cool, over a 9-6 opponent, Baume, who has fought some pretty good opponents himself, to be fair. But then he did lose to Crutchman by decision. I think he's going to lose to Mark Leminger by this decision here. Leminger, when he's on his game, he's looking good, man. But unfortunately, he just hasn't really had a good run. You know, he got submitted by the buggy choke, and that kind of went viral. Poor guy. He got elbowed by Neiman Gracie, of all people. We just saw Neiman Gracie get knocked out by Goiti Yamoichi. He lost to Julio Willis when Julio Willis was on his come up. Yaroslav Amosov beat him up in one round. Like, not really good reasons to be picking Leminger here, but I do think that he should be able to beat someone like Michael Lombardo. At one point, Leminger was such a hot prospect. He's still not even 30 years old, so he can definitely turn it around here. I think beating someone like Michael Lombardo would be a good start, because Lombardo's not a super young guy himself. He's almost 33 years old. He's had his opportunities in his career. You know, he's fought for contender series, he's fought for PFL, and now he's fought for Bellator. This guy's kind of been around the top. He's fought for M1 as well. This guy's fought for all of the top the leagues. I mean, he just got to fight in one FC or Ryzen, and now all of a sudden he's completed the full circle. I don't know what you call it, but anyway, I'm going Mike Leminger here by decision. I'm not confident about it. As I said, he's a slight favorite, which is interesting. I'm normally pretty good at picking out Bellator underdogs. I haven't picked a Bellator underdog yet. And Leminger just isn't one. So am I picking all favorites on this card just to spoil the future? I think I might be. It really depends on the odds of Camus versus Velasquez. But we'll see. We'll move on. And I'll leave you to it next one. And in the next one, you've got Cody Law taking on Chris Lencioni. And Cody Law is bouncing back off his first defeat. And in a fight which I almost predicted him to lose, but I didn't. I still picked Cody Law anyway. But I did say in my video on my own personal channel when this card was on, James Gonzalez is the most live underdog on the prelims. Oh man, I should have just picked him. I picked Cody Law. I would have been so right, because he was such a massive favorite in that matchup. And it does hurt me. I'm picking Cody Law to beat Chris Lencioni here, but he is going to have to be safe on top, because Cody Law's a wrestler. He likes to use his wrestling, obviously. That is kind of how he gets it done. But he does have pretty good striking as well. A lot of first round finishes. But he ended up losing to James Gonzalez here, who was a plus 550 underdog. And the thing about James Gonzalez, the reason why I thought he was such a good live underdog, was the level of competition that this guy was beating. 7-3, 11-6, and 11-2. Pat Sabatini, I mean, it was an injury, but he still had a win over him anyway. The point is, I'm not that good at picking Cody Law fights. I'm 0-1 on Cody Law fights, I believe. I don't think I predicted any of his other ones. But I think he should be able to beat Chris Lencioni. This is actually a guy that I have been keeping tabs on. I haven't been following him religiously, but I have been keeping an eye on Chris Lencioni, because I do think he is a pretty good prospect, a pretty interesting prospect. But he hasn't really been fighting the best competition in the world. You know, he did lose to Don Chinese, who's now in the UFC and just got embarrassed by... I forgot his name, man. That's embarrassing. But anyway, Don Chinese is in the UFC now, and he was on Bellator before then as well. I just think that Cody Law is going to win this one here. I think he's going to be using his wrestling. I think he's going to stay safe on top. Chris Lencioni will be throwing up submissions from the bottom, because it is what he does. But I think that Cody Law is going to look to use the wrestling, maybe even try and mix in that striking, because he does have a few KOs. But I think coming off his first loss, I think he's going to play it safe. He's going to try and bounce back, and prove that he is the prospect that Bellator should be building up, because Chris Lencioni, potentially a live underdog in this one here. Once again, you're getting somewhat wide odds, because it is Cody Law, someone that Bellator is trying to build up, plus 245 even, minus 300 almost even on Cody Law. But I'm going to be going with him. I'm trusting him to use the wrestling, and if he does use that wrestling, I'm trusting him to be safe on top. And I know Lencioni, as I said, he's going to be throwing up submissions, but I think that Cody Law's going to be safe. And then this next matchup, you've got Dalton Roster taking on Anthony Adams. And one thing that is pretty interesting about Anthony Adams is last win is it's over Khalid Mirzataliev. And if you know who Khalid Mirzataliev is, he won his UFC debut over Sebae Dollaway, and I believe it was like a corner stoppage. And then he popped under USADA, and then Bellator signed him, which is kind of funny. But I thought I should just bring that up because I thought it was somewhat interesting. But yeah, I'm going to be going with Dalton Roster here. I do think this is somewhat of a similar matchup to the fight against Ramiro Cotton, where Ramiro Cotton's a really good wrestler. Anthony Adams is a pretty good wrestler himself. But yeah, we saw Dalton Roster get a KO in the third round, at the very start of the third round, which is cool. We've seen him beat Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Kind of crazy, to be honest, that Dwayne Johnson can have such a successful acting career, but also mix in like a Bellator MMA fighting career. And it's cool, man. Shout out for Dwayne Johnson, man. He's really doing it. But beat Tony Johnson as well. He obviously hates Dwayne Johnson's family. But yeah, I'm going to be going with Dalton Roster here by KO. I think he's going to beat Anthony Adams. Anthony Adams is just one of those guys, man. He doesn't fight all that often. He's fought 5 times in 4.5 years. He's fought in Dana White's Contender Series twice. He lost to Chibukwem Onechigucha. I definitely said his name wrong. I apologize. But he's lost a split decision to him. Beat his 15-7 opponent. Then he fought Impa Kasanganai, who isn't in the UFC anymore. But he is on a collision course to come back. I'm telling you, man. He got robbed of a decision against a really good Russian prospect in Eagle FC. And then he knocked out a former UFC fighter. I can't remember his name. In the first round, and now he's fighting like a 40 wins to 20 losses guy, which he's just going to run straight through. Anyway, Impa Kasanganai, keep your eye on his career. He's going to be in the UFC again very, very soon. Now, Dalton Roster is assuming a big favorite, minus 750 favorite. Man, I don't know, man. I think the odds makers potentially could be making the same mistake they did when they lined up the Khalid Murtazaliev fight, because I know that Anthony Adams was a pretty big underdog in that matchup there and he managed to get it done, but I think that Dalton Roster is going to finish him, man. I think we're going to see a finish from Roster. I think he's going to KO Anthony Adams. He's too good on the feet, he's got good wrestling himself, and I like Roster as a prospect. 7-0, a guy Bellator has built up well. I mean, they've gave him, as I said, increasingly levels of competition as they do. 5-1 at the time, Taiguarda, 9-2, 6-2, 6-0 Ramiro Cotton, now we're fighting Anthony Adams. They're building up Roster here, man. I wouldn't be too surprised if you see Roster get a Bellator ranked opponent sometime soon. And in the next matchup, you've got Magomedov taking on Patchy Mix, and this is a 50-50 matchup in my eyes. It's a matchup which I'm not going to be too surprised if I get wrong, because these guys are both super high level. I believe that they're super well matched as well, and the odds reflects that. You've got Magomedov is about a minus 150 favorite. Patchy Mix is around 1 plus 120 plus 130, and I am going to be going with a favorite here again. I'm sorry, I'm picking all favorites on the Bellator card. It happens, alright. Sometimes I pick underdogs, but a lot of the times with Bellator, man, it's just Bellator's just hard to find underdogs. Let me know if you've got any underdogs in the comments below, but I've got Magomedov in this one here. I've got him to win by decision. If he didn't look so amazing against Enrique Barzola, I would have been a little bit more keen on the Patchy Mix side, because Patchy Mix just beat Kyoji Horiguchi, and that is still in my mind, rent-free. A win over Kyoji Horiguchi still ages very, very well. Kyoji Horiguchi is such a great fighter. He submitted James Gallagher as well, who's a guy that Bellator tried to build up to be like a next Conor McGregor sort of thing. It didn't really work that well, but James Gallagher's still a very good prospect himself. And before then, he lost to Juan Alchaleta, beat Yuki Motoya over at Ryzen. Bellator and Ryzen are very close, but I like Magomedov in this matchup here. I do think he's going to get it done. He's got really good wrestling and grappling, but his striking's really good as well. And I think both guys are going to have a very interesting fight on the feet until either guy starts shooting for takedowns. And I think the guy that's going to be shooting for the takedowns is going to be Magomedov. And he had a lot of success on the ground against Barzola. Obviously ended up getting the submission, but he was looking so good against Barzola. Barzola was fighting back quite a bit, but he just looked impressive to me. You know what I mean? I really it was an eye-opening performance for me for Magomedov. Before that, you know, he beat like 15-7 CJ Hamilton, and just guys that like he was probably meant to beat. Rafion Stots beat him, but Rafion Stots, we know how good he is, and he's in the main event. I think he's going to get it done, man. I think he's going to get it done by decision. I'm picking Magomedov. Mitch is always going to be a live underdog in this one here. He does have good grappling, and he does have good submissions over James Gallagher, as I said. He's got that win over Kyoji Horiguchi as well, which is just going to age well, in my opinion. I think we're going to see Kyoji Horiguchi bounce back with a couple of big wins. So, Yeah, give me Magomedov though. I'm picking him by decision. I think he's a great fighter. 31 years old. It's almost time to stop calling this guy a prospect and start calling him, I don't even know what you'd call him right now, but a contender, I guess you would say. Magomedov is a contender. So let's just move on. And earlier on in the video, if you've been watching through the whole way, I said that depending on the odds of this fight is going to depend on whether or not I've got an underdog pick. I don't. I'm picking Juliana Velasquez to win this one. She's almost the minus 200 favorite to my surprise. I thought maybe, just maybe, there was going to be a chance that this was going to be a have Juliana Velasquez as an underdog, but unfortunately we don't. So I'm going to be going with Velasquez as the minus 200 favorite. She's the former champion over Camus. Both of these girls are, to be fair, somewhat old as well for the division. I mean, Liz Camus is almost 40 years old. She's had a great career. She was one half of the first ever women's UFC fight when she fought Ronda Rousey. Almost submitted Ronda Rousey as well with that rear naked choke and then slid off the top, and Rousey ended up submitting her. And then Juliana Velasquez as well. She's not the youngest girl at all. She's 36 years old, 12-1 as well, and she was the former champion. She was a very slight favourite to Camus. I'm actually not too sure who I picked in that matchup. I think I picked Velasquez and got it wrong, and I'm still going to pick Velasquez again because I do think that Velasquez is going to be the one that's going to be making the more adjustments, you know what I mean? And the reason why it's going to be an instant rematch is because it is a pretty interesting stoppage. It was up against the cage. It was from the crucifix position, and Camus only really hit her with a few ground and pound shots, and then it was stopped. I don't think it was like too early. It wasn't the worst stoppage in the world, but it does make sense why they're going to run it back, because there really isn't a clear woman's flyweight contender at the top of the Bellator division right now. So I don't mind Velasquez getting an instant rematch. But Camus, man, she's had a great career. Like, she really has. I do want to shed light on Liz Camus's career because I do think that it is going to go down as pretty underrated. She didn't have the greatest UFC run, but at the same time, you know, this girl was on, as I said, one half of the first ever women's MMA fight in the UFC, where she did lose to Ronda Rousey. She bounced back, has that win over Jessica Andrade, which is aged well, but it wasn't 2013. Win over Lauren Murphy once again is aged well. Win over Caitlin Chikagian is aged well. Jennifer Myers aged well. Pudilova not so much, but she's back in the UFC. And then she's gone into Bellator, and she's had a pretty good run, you know, undefeated run all the way. So a win over Kana Watanabe as well, which is pretty cool, pretty quickly on into the fight. But yeah, as I said, Liz Camus, I feel like she's just going to have a very underrated, underappreciated career. But I think that the girl that is going to win this fight is going to be the one that is able to make the most adjustments. And I think that Juliana Velasquez is going to do that. I know they're both not the youngest in the world, but Liz Camus being 39 years old still does kind of concern me a little bit. I feel like at this point, someone like Juliana Velasquez should be able to make the adjustments to beat Liz Camus in this matchup here. The fight was 7 months ago, so Velasquez has had plenty of time to recover, so has Camus. But I'm going with Velasquez. I think she's going to win the decision. It'll be very interesting to see if they do a trilogy, like if it's a super close decision and Velasquez wins like 48-47, or even it's like a split decision or something crazy like that. Or even, like, once again, like another controversial stoppage. Maybe you see a trilogy out of these two, but I'm going to go with Velasquez. Maybe it's a bad pick. Like, as I said, I'm not the best at picking women's MMA, but I do think that Velasquez is going to make the adjustments necessary to beat Liz Camus, because she was looking good in the first fight until Camus got her down, started elbowing her out. I mean, I guess the split decision win over 6-2, Kilcotts doesn't look that good, but she is the one that beat and exposed Malik McFarlane for not being that great. So I guess that's still a very good win that has aged poorly, but she was still the one to expose McFarlane, so I guess that's cool. But yeah, give me Velasquez to beat Liz Camus in this one here. Underrated fighter is Camus though, in my opinion. And now you've got Rafael Stots taking on Danny Sabatello, and both guys have really impressive records. Danny Sabatello 13-1, Rafael Stots 18-1. And the thing about Rafael Stots is, man, this guy could easily be 19-0 low-key if he didn't get spinning back-fisted in 15 seconds by his father, the Merab Dvalishvili. But Merab Dvalishvili, man, knocked him out in 15 seconds on that, I think it was like Dana White's looking for a fight. But yeah, that's kind of crazy, man. He bounced back pretty well, though. He's had a very successful career in Bellator. And he's gone on to beat some really good opponents like Magomedov, Juan Archuleta, Justin, and Josh Hill as well. Keith Lee, who I believe is Kevin Lee's younger brother as well, which is kind of cool. But yeah, Rafael Stots. I think that Rafael Stots should be able to beat Danny Sabatello here, but I will talk about Danny Sabatello's career a little bit here. This guy was on Dana White's Contender Series and was snubbed It would have been funny though if he did get signed. I know he's a super boring fighter, and I will get to that later. But if he did get signed to the UFC, this guy, I don't know if he would be a star, but a lot more people would talk about him because he is hilarious. He does talk a lot of smack, and he does say some hilarious stuff. And I don't really know how to explain it, man, but just Danny Sabatello, you just gotta watch his interviews and you'll know what I mean. He's kind of like a Conor McGregor type, with a super high-pitched helium voice. He beat Brett Johns as well. Brett Johns, I believe that was his first fight out of the UFC, which was interesting because, as I said, Danny Sabatello got snubbed from Dana White's Contender Series. That was a bit of an eye-opening performance from Danny Sabatello, maybe telling the UFC that they should have signed him. But Danny Sabatello, man, he talks a lot of smack for a guy with a really boring style. Like, this guy is just not exciting to watch whatsoever when he's in the cage. He's so funny outside of the cage, but aside from that, man, it's just a... Oh, dude, whoever wins this fight is going to have so much bragging rights over the other one because so much has been said between the two. Bellator has really built this fight up a lot. Like, there's been events, back-to-back events, I would say, where they've brought these two into the cage, like, in the main card, between a couple of fights in the main card, and they've just talked a little bit of smack to each other. And Danny Sabatello, man, he's just so funny, like, as I said. But let's just talk about the fight. Both guys are wrestlers for the most part. I feel like Rafael Stots does have the advantage. I want to say, like, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I want to say, like, almost everywhere. But the thing about Danny Sabatello is his wrestling style is the way it is. Like, he just doesn't care what people think. Like, he is going to grind out a really boring decision because that's what he does. Danny Sabatello, he uses his wrestling, he'll grind you up against the cage or on the ground and just do not a lot, you know. Like, he's just a very boring fighter to watch. He recently did beat Leandro Higo, which is a very good win. He beat John Lugo, who was undefeated at the time. Brett Johns is a really good win as well. Rafael Stots just beat Juan Archuleta by KO. Magomedov by decision, and Josh Hill as well by decision, but Josh Hill was a pretty old guy at the time. But the point is, man, both guys are good wrestlers. It's going to be a very interesting fight, but I think that we're going to see Rafael Stots beat up Danny Sabatello. I think Stots is going to stop the wrestling of Sabatello. I don't know if he's going to entertain his own. He probably will, but maybe not in the first couple of rounds. But as I said, if Danny Sabatello is going to win this fight, he's really only got one way to do it, and that's to take down Stots and grind him up against the cage or grind him on the ground. And it's going to be a really boring fight. The thing with Stots, though, is all he's got to really do is defense takedowns, and if he does get taken down, he's just got to be active off bottom because Sabatello's not very active on top, or he's got to work to get up and just keep the fight on the feet. Even though, like, I feel like someone like Rafael Stots could win the fight on bottom, you know, by throwing up elbows, cutting open Sabatello, throwing up submissions as well, just being more active. And, but yeah, as I said, I feel like Sabatello's got one way to win the fight, and it's to use his wrestling and be boring, but I feel like someone like Stots has more than one way to win the fight, and I like options in fights, which is why I'm picking Stots. He's a very slight favourite, minus 160 at the moment here, and I do like it. I do like him as a favourite. As I said, all favourites on the card, I'm sorry, like, it's not something I do on purpose. I don't pick fights because of underdogs, like, I don't, because of the odds. But it's just how it's ended up being. Like, I do apologise for that. It does happen, obviously with Bellator especially, because you've got guys, like a lot of guys, like minus 300, minus 400, minus 800, minus 2,000. It's hard to pick against guys like that, but yeah, man, as I said, I always do try and look for underdogs. It hasn't come this week. I apologise for that, but it just happens. Like, it's not something I intend to, I don't, like, purposely pick underdogs just to pick underdogs, you know what I mean? So I like Rafael Stots in this matchup. I think he's got more options. I like him on the feet. I like his wrestling as well if he has to use it. I like his grappling too. And Danny Sabatello, as I said, man, if he wants to win the fight, he has to use his wrestling. He has to be boring. He has to grind it out. And I don't think Stots is going to let him do it. It's going to be interesting though, because these guys have talked a lot of smack before, and the interviews up to the fight night are going to be funny. Sabatello's got like the craziest high-pitched voice for his personality. It's absolutely hilarious. I love it, man. I really do. I'm so happy to see two guys in Bellator building up a fight like this, because it's not often you see this, because the truth is Bellator is really bad at promotion. I feel like a lot of people might not even know that this fight is on, but because Stots and Sabatello are talking so much smack to each other, people are going to know about it and they're going to want to watch it. So I like that. You know, Bellator is so bad at promotion. You know, UFC's so good at promotion, and Bellator just really lacks in that sort of area. So it's good to see a couple of fighters build up their fight, get a few eyes on the fight, and hopefully this is a very successful event for Bellator. Once again, man, taking place on the same night as a weekend as a pay-per-view though, maybe they could do a little bit better than that. But yeah, I feel like this is definitely a weekend you can make a whole weekend around MMA from. You could watch Bellator on Friday and then watch UFC on Saturday, sort of thing. I think that's a pretty good idea. It's what I will be doing anyway, except it will be like Bellator during the day on Saturday and then UFC during the day on Sunday because I'm from New Zealand. But it is what it is, same sort of thing. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know. And just let me know what you think, just in general about the card and everything like that. Hopefully you didn't mind me being on the We Want Picks show. I always do like being on We Want Picks, and I do try and put my best effort into the video. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one.